Welcome back. Are you ready to get stuck in? Remember that we are revising population ecology, in particular in this lesson, population sizes and population growth curves. And we're now going to focus on how we answer terminology questions. Now, you'll find terminology or definitions, vocabulary, asked either as columns or simple definition given, you must supply the term. Let's look at these columns first of all. How to tackle column questions. And really the same kind of knowledge that's tested in a multiple choice can also be tested in columns because we're looking at the idea of options. Now, your instruction will be write A only, B only, both A and B, or none. And notice you're given 2 marks, which means that there is thinking involved. This is not just supplying a term. So if in column 1 it says, will increase the size of the population, and the options are A, mortality, and B, immigration, we're going to use the same strategy that we did in terms of multiple choice. We're going to say, read it. We're going to eliminate anything that we think could be incorrect. Then we will select, check, never leave it out, and very importantly for the column questions, we're going to follow the instructions. In other words, we're not going to write the word neither, we're going to write the word none, because that is what the instructions have told us to do. So, eliminate, we've read, let's try and eliminate. Increase the size of the population. Well, we know mortality means death, which is definitely a decrease. Immigration means coming into a population. So now I'm going to select. I'm selecting B only. Let me check it. Increasing the size of a population, immigration. That looks right. Now I'm going to follow my instructions and I'm going to write B only. All right, does that make sense to you? Increase in population size, immigration, or natality, but natality wasn't mentioned. Decrease in population size, mortality, or immigration. So in fact, when we now really focus on our question and answer it, we know that the answer is B only, not just B or simply writing the letter B. Follow the instructions and write B only. Let's move on to another example. Density dependent limiting factor, I'm doing the read part, flood or veld fire. Now let me move on to the eliminate. I've got to try and remember what a density dependent limiting factor is. I know that it's going to limit the size of a population and it is dependent on how many organisms there are in the population. So now I'm going to select. If there is a flood, does it matter if there are 1 or 2 or 2,000 members of the population? No, they'll all be killed. In the same way, veld fire doesn't matter what the density of the population is, it's going to affect the population. So now I've checked my information. Here we go. here are my density-dependent limiting factors: food and water, competition, space and shelter, predation, disease. Here are my density-independent natural catastrophes and climate. And when we look at our options again, floods and veld fires belong in the group of natural catastrophes and climate. So in fact, both of them are density independent factors. And so now I must answer my question, never leave it out, follow the instructions, and here we see that both of these are in fact density independent, so we must say none. That is going to be our answer here. We don't write not A or B, neither, we write none. Good. Now we've seen how we can answer the columns. Let's have a look at the definition being provided and you provide the term. How to tackle these? Well, we're going to move away from rescue and our key is going to be rock, right? Not rescue any longer because we don't have options to eliminate or select. Now we're working with rock. So what does rock mean? Read the statement, offer only one term, and check your spelling. Simple, straightforward. Read it, one term, and check it. Let's go with some examples. A group of organisms, we're doing the R, the read, a group of organisms belonging to the same species, living in the same area, I am going to call this a population. I've offered one term, I check it that I've spelt it correctly, I'm happy. Next one, the death rate of a population. I've read it. I think the death rate is going to be mortality. And I'm going to check my spelling, mortality. I'm happy with that one. The total number of individuals of a population that a particular area can support. Now, I'm going to write here density. I think that the total number of individuals refers to the density. But now when I go back and check, I see that I'm talking about the number that an area can support. So I'm not happy now. I need to bring in the idea of area, neatly cross it out, and now I'm going to write in carrying capacity. So it doesn't matter that I've actually said that something is incorrect. I've checked it, and I wouldn't have got this one right if I hadn't have checked it. Please also notice that this term consists of two words. So although it is a term, it's got two words. So although we are offering one term, we're not saying density or carrying capacity, because then the examiner will have marked the first one and it's incorrect, and they will ignore my second option. So it can consist of two words, but don't ever offer the examiner a choice. Let's try the fourth one. A growth curve that shows no evidence of a stable equilibrium. Quickly, I'm going to say, okay, that and that, and here's my stable one. So I'm looking at this growth curve, and we're talking here exponential. And I go back, I check my spelling, and I'm happy with that. Are you getting how this works? Let's try to use the rock strategy. The birth rate of a population, and I know my terminology, I'm going to write natality. When individuals leave a population permanently, I think it's emigration. So I write my term and I say, oh my word, I've written immigration because I checked it. So I will need to cross it out and correct it. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no harm in crossing out and correcting something. It is important that you check what you're doing, that you make sure that you've answered the question properly. Let's move on. The phase at the beginning of a growth curve where the population is growing slowly. Here's another term that consists of 2 words. So although it's a term, there's 2 words. Competition, disease, and nesting sites are examples of, and here we've got a long term, density dependent factors. So here we've got 3 words making up our term, and we check it, density dependent factors. We're happy with that. Now, in your exam paper, in a test, you're going to need to be able to not just select a word or supply a word. You're going to have to start putting your ideas down in sentences and paragraphs. Usually, we'll find keywords associated with paragraphs. So the question may ask you to explain something. It might ask you to describe a process or something that is going to be happening in a population. It might ask you to discuss. And certainly things like explain, describe, discuss, you can't do in 1 word. You need to be able to unpack ideas. And there are very important skills associated with writing a paragraph. And right at the beginning of this lesson, I said, those skills that you've learnt in your languages, transfer them across to the life sciences because the skills remain the same. So let's see how we tackle paragraph writing. Read the question very carefully in order to understand what the focus of the paragraph must be. And your focus is going to be stated in your topic sentence, which is your first sentence that introduces the topic very clearly. Don't repeat the question at the start of the paragraph. That's a waste of everyone's time. Make sure that your group of sentences are logically structured. They don't jump around. Keep the sentences short. So avoid long, complex sentences. I hate it when I have to mark a paragraph and the learner has gone this point and that point and that point. Keep your sentences short and clear. Read over your paragraph once you've written it, checking your spelling and grammar, and make sure that you check that it actually answers what was asked. Shall we now try an example? Have you got all those strategies and skills down? Let's look at an example. Write a paragraph in which you explain what mortality is, and, so there's a second part to my paragraph, how it affects a population, and here's a third part, give some causes of mortality within a population. So let's look at my paragraph. Mortality refers to the death rate in a population, and I've given a definition of mortality as my topic sentence because that was what the paragraph had to be about. But now I've got to go on and answer all the other parts of the paragraph. So here's my topic sentence. Mortality refers to the death rate. Remember, I'm explaining what mortality is. So giving a definition might get me 1 mark, but let's explain. In other words, let's unpack what we mean. It is the number of deaths in a population over a particular period in time. Let's go on to the second part of our paragraph, how it affects a population. Mortality causes the population to decrease in size. Sometimes, I'm explaining, remember, I'm unpacking, individuals can die from old age. Sometimes death is caused by disease, lack of sufficient food, all right? And if we tried another question, we could see stable populations have minor fluctuations around the carrying capacity. This is your job. I've got a stable population with minor changes around a carrying capacity. Write a paragraph to explain the statement. So you would have to pick on this part of the graph and you would have to write a paragraph in which you explain how those fluctuations come about and what is causing those fluctuations. So you're going to be talking about things called environmental resistance, carrying capacity, limiting factors. You've got it in hand. You can do this. I challenge you to write this paragraph and then check your answer and see, were you able to interpret this minor fluctuations around the carrying capacity?